All right, gentlemen, this is your main man, Scott McKay, coming at you again with another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And today we're going to talk about that resentment that can kind of creep in when things aren't going quite well for you, especially with the women in your life or, even in your careers also. Before we get started on that, I want to remind you that you can catch me on most social media outlets at Scott McKay, with the exception of Instagram, which is at Real Scott McKay. And the website is mountaintoppodcast.com. And gentlemen, if you aren't on the Facebook group just yet, it is the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook, and I hope to see you there. My guest today is someone I first interviewed probably 18 years ago. And he and I are pretty much part of the group of OGs back in the men's dating space. And it has been way too long since I've interviewed him, even since I talked to him. We were catching up before we started with the actual podcast recording here. His name is Frank Kermit, and he likes to say he's Frank because he has to be. And that is a fact for sure. He's up in Montreal, Canada. And some of you guys may know Frank from his Frank Talk site and the persona he had back up in the pickup artist era. These days, like most of us, he's married with a family, and things have changed for him. And he's also undergone a bit of a personal transformation that he's going to talk to you about. But the topic du jour is definitely about resentment, something we haven't covered enough on this show. Frank Kermit, man, welcome. It's great to see you, buddy.
It's so great to be here. You and I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk in years. You were one of the first people, one of the first podcasts that I was on when I ventured into the world of becoming a dating coach. And here now, almost 20 years later, you're one of the first people who interviews me as I'm slowly getting back into it after taking a hiatus and focusing on my health.
Yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about here. Let's go ahead and talk about the journey you've been on for the last several years. You and I are both guys who aren't just naturally skinny dudes who can inhale food and a bunch of burgers and fries and still say flaquito. We can't do that. You and I both have it in our genetics that it's a constant battle. So I don't know if a lot of the guys who know you from dating advice know exactly what happened over the course of the last several years. So just bring us up to speed on that, because I think it's a fascinating story, Frank.
All right. Well, one of the things that distinguished me as a dating coach is that I was always a much bigger guy. And I still went out of my way to connect with women. I still had a very active social life, an active sex life. I just made do with what I had, and wherever I was limited, I worked around those limitations. And it was not easy. I faced a lot more rejection. I faced a lot more hardships, and I just overcame it and still managed to have a social life, eventually getting married, having a family. Over the course of the last 15, 20 years, my health got worse. I eventually ballooned to 460 pounds.
That's a big dude.
Yeah, and it was a very unhealthy time. Um, and in 2020, I got a call from my doctor saying, Frank, you have diabetes. Now, I had been obese for so many years without getting diabetes, which that and alone was pretty remarkable. But the day came when I got that phone call. Yeah, you've got diabetes now. That was the day I said, okay, I need to conquer obesity. And that began a journey involving surgeries, therapy, a lot of my own personal development, trying to get to the source of my food addictions. One of the things I learned on this journey is that the world of dating and the world of getting healthy is a multifactorial battle. It's never just one thing. Okay, it's never just one thing. Oh, I'm struggling with women. It's because I'm not rich, or I'm not this and I'm not that. Those are legitimate concerns. Okay, those are legitimate factors, but it's very rarely the one factor. There's usually multiple factors, and in order to accomplish any of these journeys, you have to battle every single factor, or at the very least, figure out how to work around those factors. And battling obesity was also something that I realized obesity is the symptom of the issue, not the actual issue.
Before you continue, I'd like to jump in here real quick and underscore something you said that I think probably would be worth its own podcast in and of itself. And that's I'm going to scapegoat one factor that keeps me from being successful with women or being successful in my career. I'm not very tall. A lot of guys will come to me and they've read, you know, too many articles out there saying that women want tall guys. It's the first thing they want. It's the first checkbox at the top of the list. And if you're I heard one that said if you're under 6'2", 85% of women don't even want you. And here I am, 5'5" and I had wonderful women and the women I really wanted all through my dating life once I got everything together. And I would argue it's because I didn't scapegoat my height. As soon as I stopped worrying about it, it seemed like everybody else stopped worrying about it. I don't even get short jokes from my peers nowadays, perhaps because I carry myself differently. And, that reminds me of the simple fact that most women don't like short guys, not because of their height, but because of how short guys feel about being short. So it's kind of like a meta level death spiral we send ourselves into. But indeed, whatever it is, we're going to scapegoat this one thing that usually I feel helpless about. It's not something I can change. I was born dirt poor, and I'm going to stay that way. I'm not very tall, can't do anything about it. I'm ugly, or, I've got this affliction of some sort, and no woman would ever want a guy like that. And I've heard guys come up to me and admit straight up, I bet you've never heard this one before, but here's my limiting belief. I have this, and because of that, no woman wants me. And I'm thinking like, well, yeah, that's a new one on me. I don't hear a whole lot of guys going around saying because I've got this exotic issue that pretty much is invisible to the rest of the world, no women are ever going to want me. But we do this. We find something about ourselves that is a pre-disqualifier in our minds. And we project to the world, you're not going to want me. You're not going to aid and abet in any of my success. I might as well just throw my hands up in the air and forget about it because I have this one thing going on. And in many ways, like I said, usually, first of all, it's our attitude about that limiting belief and the limiting belief itself rather than the actual state of affairs that's keeping us from getting the success. And then, like you said, and I believe very eloquently and correctly, it's usually not one thing. It may be a cascade of things based on this one thing about ourselves we dislike and resent so much, right? But a lot of guys are not doing any self-work at all. They're sitting around lazy, getting fat, right? Not taking care of themselves, not even taking a shower. And either they're saying to themselves, well, you know what? If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. My own private supermodel is going to walk through the basement of my mommy's house and take my Cheeto-fingered hands, and take me away from all this. It's not going to happen, Captain. But by the same token, a lot of those guys are going, I could work and work and work on all these other things, and at the end of the day, I'm still going to be short, or I'm still not going to be a multi-gazillionaire. And what happens is guys will go from, not being very wealthy at all, not even making quote unquote good money, in the Robert Kiyosaki sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll go to making $150,000 a year. And you know what they'll do, Frank? You know what they'll do. They'll go, well, I'm not making $250,000 a year yet, so women still don't want me. We just drive these limiting beliefs, don't we? And it just starts making us into very resentful dudes.
There's so much that I want to say based on all that commentary.
Say it all, man. Take the floor.
I'm just going to try to pick them as they come up to my brain because there was a lot there. The first thing is that the higher a person's standards, when their skill level doesn't allow them to actually be with anybody at that level, okay? That's a fear of intimacy. So when you see a lot of women talking about he has to have this and this and this and this, and they're stacking it up, but she's not able to get a commitment from a guy at that level. Why does she have all those standards? It's not because she's delusional. It's because she likely has a fear of intimacy. And as long as she keeps her standards high, and it's a standard that she cannot attract legitimately for commitment, it keeps her away from what she's really terrified about.
It's like she's built a wall of standards.
Exactly. And we see this with men too. My biggest coaching base is still adult male virgins, men who have never had a girlfriend, who are starting at a base level where they have no social skills, no nothing, and slowly building them up to figure out how to understand women, how to communicate to them, how to address their emotional needs, which is my particular forte, and getting their first girlfriends, getting their first sexual experiences. Well, what's a common trait amongst adult male virgins? They say the girl that I end up having to date has got to be, and they start listing all of these traits and characteristics, but they have no ability to attract that. Okay, and
not to be missed, she also has to be a virgin like him.
not always. That can be there, but for each guy, that list of criteria is going to be different because it's whatever list that he believes on some level is unattainable. I also want to make something clear. For men and women, their lists are going to be different because how we measure that fear of intimacy is different. For men, it's whether or not he can get sex with the woman of the list he's looking for. For women, it's whether or not she can get his commitment. A woman who's getting sex from the kind of man that she would want still may have a fear of intimacy and still may not achieve what would be, let's say, relationship success. Because getting a man sex isn't very difficult. It's getting a man's commitment. Now, if she can get a man sex, but she can't get his commitment, that is the equivalent of a guy not being able to even get sex. So that's something I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that, but that's the way to think about it.
We're pretty much on board with you around here on all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, this audience is a pretty well-evolved group of guys.
Okay. Now, getting back to that, whatever that thing is, and you mentioned it clearly. Somebody says, "I'm not rich." Well, what happens when he becomes rich? He'll find some other reason. I'm not rich enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. So I'm just going to put this out there. Generally speaking, when we're looking at reasons why people are still single because they don't feel they're enough, and no matter what it is they achieve, they still never feel they're enough. They still never feel they're enough. It usually comes, and I've been doing this now for over 20 years. Okay, I'm not a psychologist. I've got a few certifications in trauma counseling and whatnot, but I'm just professing this. I'm a coach, not a doctor in psychology. But I work with real people, and I have done extensive hours and hours of coaching getting into the core of this. Most people never felt loved enough in their developmental years as children. They were made to feel that love is conditional and that they were not enough.
Well, you also have situations where parents put a lot of expectations on kids, and as long as the expectations are being met, everything's copacetic. But as soon as that kid falls short of even the slightest of those expectations, off to a child psychiatrist we go. There's a problem and we got to fix it. So anything that would qualify as success is business as usual. We're not going to throw a party. There's not going to be any hand pounds and huzzas for a guy who just did what he was expected to do. And what was expected was top tier excellence. So those are the kids who grow up being people pleasers, being the ones who are constantly looking for approval from others because they've never gotten it. They've never gotten across that finish line where they can say, I've won. It's always been, well, the status quo is perfect. That's what's to be expected. Don't ever let it deviate from that. And it's not that parents are evil, horrible people. It's just kind of, I call it the baby Jesus syndrome. They give their kid, especially if they're an only child, it's like they kind of fail forward with that. You know what I mean? It's the parent has a child and all of a sudden they've got this wonderful baby and they practically, frankly, worship this baby. And the kid grows up and they want only the best for the kid and they want the kid to succeed. And then they project onto that kid these high standards that the kid can't possibly sustain, even if they meet them sometimes. And, but as the siblings are born, the parents tend to back off on that. So by the time you're up to your third or fourth kid, they're basically feral children, free range, and they can do whatever they want. And if they want to grow up and be a plumber or something, not even go to college or something someday. I mean, we love and need plumbers because that's hard work. But I think you know what I'm getting at. The baby Jesus syndrome falls to the wayside. So it's not that parents are horrible people. It's just that their parenting is misguided in a way that's psychologically harming the child as they grow into adulthood.
I've worked with people who were not baby Jesus. I've worked with people who legitimately felt hated by their parents.
That happens too,
And
for sure.
the trauma of growing up in an environment where you're not feeling safe and you're not feeling loved by the very people who are supposed to love and protect you can create uh, a lot of challenges with being able to form intimate emotional connections with other human beings. And one of the things that I try to communicate to every man who comes to me with those type of pains, and that is, if you really want to make the world a better place, go home and love your children. Go home and be a good parent. And sometimes, this is not all, okay? This is not across the board. But sometimes what I have seen in true healing is that when a man becomes a father and has his own kids, in the process of raising his kids, he breaks the repeating behavior patterns of the generational trauma in his family line, and he heals through being a better parent to his children than his parents were to him. And that is one of the ways to battle a lot of the resentment. And knowing that, well, like again, when a guy's coming to me saying, "How do I get motivation for dealing with all this thing?" Well, if you do have the intent at some point of wanting a family, you need to heal so that you are a better parent to your children than your parents were to you. And for some people, that is a wonderful motivation to push them to do the things that they're uncomfortable doing so that they can heal from that resentment.
A lot of people throw a blanket over that whole concept saying, guess what? You know what? It's genetic. You're going to be just like your parents. You didn't like your parents. You didn't like what they did to you. Forget about it because you're going to grow up and you're going to be just like them. A pox on that. It doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. As someone who's had to go through that process, the instinct is always there. The instinct is always to repeat the behavior pattern that you grew up with. And it takes a lot of conscious effort initially to break that pattern and to establish new patterns. It's challenging to become a really good parent when you didn't have the example of what a good parent was. And I mean, I'm grateful for the fact that I watched so much television as a kid because a lot of the sitcoms I would watch and a lot of the educational programs I would watch gave me the example that I didn't have at home. So I luckily had that example, but even so, the instinct to repeat the behavior pattern is there. It's when that instinct kicks in and we do something different in that moment. That's how we break the pattern, and that's how we find a certain level of healing from it.
And getting back to the main point, resentment ain't it. I mean, if you're going to wallow in resentment your whole life, what you're doing is in and of itself furthering that pattern of failure.
One of the challenges of dealing with resentment is that on some level, resentment makes us feel safe. Okay? People resent, but they feel safe when they resent
You
because
don't
they're
have to
thinking,
risk reaching out from that resentment.
well, it's not just that. It's not just about not reaching out because I'm resentful, so I'm not going to do it. Resentment keeps us safe because it doesn't allow us to take chances. And as long as we remember what we're resentful about, we're less likely to let it happen to us again.
Well, I would say that is all about risk. I'm nice and safe in my little cocoon of resentment. Nobody can touch me. If I were to say to myself, well, I'm sick of being resentful, I'm going to branch out and try to break this. Well, someone may smite me in a way that forces me right back into that resentment cocoon. And that would be possibly twice as painful as it was if I wouldn't have ventured out at all.
Another challenge with resentment, as you just brought up, is that inevitably you're going to get hurt on this process. If when you break, to use your analogy, when you break out of that cocoon of resentment and you give it a shot and you try, you must go in with the expectation that you're going to get hurt. Things are going to blow up in your face. Bad things are still going to happen to you, but you're going to learn how to cope with those bad things in a different way. And it's learning those coping strategies that helps you claw out of that canyon of resentment.
I get about 10 to 12 pitches per day from people who want to be on this show. And, I only do one show with a guest per week. So you can do the arithmetic there. I would say a quarter of them are from resilience coaches. thinking that they've come upon this incredibly unique and powerful topic nobody's talking about. But the truth is, Frank, everybody's talking about resilience nowadays because we all lack it, or most of us lack it. I mean, we're too hurt. We get butt hurt. We get offended over relatively small things. And it's because we live in a society where we're blessed. A lot of those Maslowian needs closer to the bottom of the pyramid are met. And we start talking about things like self-actualizing and so forth, things that, people who are in the third world don't even get around to even knowing about, right? Or even considering. But if someone's blocking us from our perceived need to self-actualize in some way, we get resentment building up in us over all sorts of things. And yet what you're talking about is generational, familial. I would argue, you were mentioning how basically a kid can grow up feeling hated. There's scapegoat syndrome, which is a very real thing. Narcissistic parents, not to drop the N word again, but clinical narcissism, first of all, can be genetic. And what happens is these parents, the kids are there to serve their needs, to look good in front of, the rest of my family or my friends. If my kids shame me, if their behavior or their lack of performance shames me, then that child will be punished, mommy dearest stuff, right? But what happens is when that kid gets scapegoated, they can't do anything right. They feel hated. They're the kid who was the lightning rod for everything in the family because the parents decided I don't like that kid as much. And they grow up and they're damaged people. But at the same time, a lot of those people do grow up as genetically narcissistic. So when they reach out to a coach like you or me, or even get into the, hiring a therapist, it's still all about them and they lack boundaries. And it's like, well, if you don't want to help me, I understand because I'm a terrible person. You don't have to talk to me again. And, a lot of manipulation by weakness. And that just feeds this resentment. It feeds this fear. It doesn't help them heal from it. So there's a lot of nuances to how people arrive at this place in their life, just like you're saying, frankly, and literally. So, that they're just really resentful. And some of it, yes, it may be because someone did this to me. But at some point in life, no matter what your whatever road you traveled to get here, at some point in your life, Frank, you've got to decide I'm not a victim anymore. And the vulnerability in the strong sense of the word, where I'm going to face what I have to face to get back out there and beat this resentment down with a shovel until it stops twitching, is going to involve perhaps getting hurt. It's going to perhaps get bloody sometimes. People may not respond to me the way I want them to respond. And I'll have a choice to make at that point, which is either to go back into my shell and go into schlep rock mode again and say, poor me, and not live my best life. Or I'm going to go, yeah, you know what? None of us get out of this alive. I got hurt. I took my lumps. I didn't get first place this time. I don't care whether my parents were the ones who said you have to get first place all the time or there's something wrong with you. I have to put all of that in the past, look forward, stop being victimized, letting myself feel like a victim and say, I'm going to go from victim to victor somehow. Anytime you show me someone who's got a lot of resentment, they're just negative Nancy about everything, right? I agree. The patterns are almost exactly the way you've described them. Something has gotten them to that point. They weren't born that way.
No, usually people who carry a lot of resentment, they have reason to.
Yeah,
Okay?
they've been
They've been
hurt.
betrayed. They've
Yes.
been betrayed. When we look at, especially in a society that does not particularly treat men very well, there's going to be a lot of resentment, and a lot of that resentment is legitimate. And when I'm working with somebody who has that level of resentment, and I understand it because I was there, we have to make a choice as an individual. And anybody who grew up in that kind of environment, anybody who's been betrayed by the system or betrayed by people who were supposed to have their back, we have a choice. We can either A, be the one to break that pattern. We can say, I don't want to make anybody else feel the way that I felt. and we start adopting a way of taking care of ourselves so that we are in a position to take care of other people who at some point we will care about. Now, there's a second choice, and this is what most people may fall into if they're not actively and consciously making that decision. And that is they contain that cesspool of core hurt. And the only way that they can feel any rapport with the world around them is to cause other people to go through the same hurt that they went through. That, in the essence, is the spirit of the bully, because usually every bully has been bullied at some point, and the only way that they can feel normal and connected to the world is to bully others. So as long as everybody else is feeling the same level of misery and self-hatred that they feel a sense of balance. And that's not an easy thing to break, because once again, the resentment at the core of that is what makes people feel safe. So when
It's
you
like
see,
junk food for the
yeah,
soul.
it is. And the same way that, when I was obese, and I didn't want to process the intense emotions that would come up, eating, overeating was a great way to block out those feelings. And reaching a point where I'm not as obsessed with food. And I still have another year on this hurt journey of healing from obesity. I still have another year to go. I've got a major surgery coming up in a couple of months from now. And going to food in order to deal with all of that resentment and negative emotion, I mean, that was my drug of choice. So I get it. But if I don't conquer this and if I don't heal from it, all I'm going to do is pass on that negativity to my family, my friends, the people I care about. And it has to stop with me.
That resentment may feel good in the moment. Like we were saying, it's kind of like junk food. It feels good when
Resentment
you're
makes you
eating it,
feel
but it
powerful.
makes you unhealthy.
Listen, when you get resentful about something, in that moment, you feel powerful. That's why I'd say it's related to having someone feel safe. Because when you're resentment, you're angry, you're focused, and you're going to make sure, and whether it be going after revenge or whether it's building up a wall, whether it's coming up with standards, whether it's finding some way to punish somebody else for the bad things that happened to you.
And these
Uh,
guys find other people in their own little echo chambers online and build groups of themselves to
yeah.
encourage each other in that.
One of the things that I did on this journey in healing from my obesity is that I identified people who had really hurt me, and one by one I reached out to them and I confronted them, and that was not an easy thing to do.
What did that look like? Give me an example without mentioning any names.
Okay, I reached out to a former elementary school teacher who, because of a incident, I was 11 years old, and it was the first time in my life I had contemplated suicide. And I had walked along a train track, and I laid my neck down on the track, waiting for the next train to come. This was before the internet, so there was no way to know when the next train was coming. I mean, I was 11 years old. I didn't know any better. And by 9:30 at night, no train had come. And so I figured I better get home before my parents get mad at me.
Ironically,
Yeah. So it's like, well, I better get home. My parents are going to be mad at me because, the train had come. And, I got the idea from watching an old black and white movie where I saw someone do that. And it was something I carried with me for over 40 some odd years. And as part of the healing journey, it's like, I got to get closure on this. So I reached out, tracked down that elementary school teacher, had an interaction with him, and I just let him know that what he did caused an 11-year-old boy to want to kill himself.
how did that go?
It was an online interaction. And at first, we had a little pleasant thing. And I says, well, I don't know if you remember me. And, we had a little interaction. And then I wrote to him and I told him everything that had happened. And I even said something along the lines of, look, I really hate you. And I'm letting you know that I hate you. And he never responded after that. No apologies, no nothing. He completely disappeared. But that's okay because I got it out of my system. I finally confronted somebody who hurt me. And then when the person that had put us together, because I had reached out and says, "Oh, hey, do you know where this teacher, this person is?" "Oh, yeah, here, I'll put you in contact." I let that person know about the whole story, and that person was no longer interested in communicating with me, and that's okay.
Would you feel maybe as if you offloaded that resentment onto your elementary school teacher and now they resent you for bringing it up?
It's possible,
But
but
that's their problem.
that's their problem, and I didn't say anything like, I want you dead," or anything like that. I just wanted to say, had you done something like that in today's day and age, you probably would have lost your job. Um, but that's one example. Okay, one example. Now, not everybody has the opportunity to confront those people who hurt them.
That's right. Some of them have passed on, or some of them are just not going to
Okay,
be able to be found at all.
so I was fortunate in the sense that I had the chance to confront that particular person. But part of what I'm learning on this journey too is that that's not always necessary. Sometimes you can find peace in other ways. There's therapeutic methods. Talking to the empty chair is one of them. And I'm not trying to push that as one of the only options. I'm just pointing out that the resentment I carried from that, the absolute hatred, the fear, all of that, that is the core of most of the challenges we have. We carry things from childhood that fill in that resentment. And let's be clear here. You can be an adult man who has been horribly betrayed by the system, horribly betrayed by the people who you were loving and taking care of. And you're entitled to your resentment. You're not wrong for being angry. You're not wrong for being hurt. We have to be careful that in the process of trying to protect ourselves and trying to move forward in life, that we're not further limiting ourselves because of the bad actions of other people.
Let me
And
offer
that
something. Um, I couldn't agree with you more that people who are resentful or even hateful or bitter often have very good reasons for it. Like I said before, we're not born this way. And I do think if you try to talk somebody off of that proverbial ledge of being bitter and just tell them to buck up, little buckaroo, without giving them any substance behind it, they're just going to probably start pointing that anger and bitterness towards you. Especially if you haven't, you being the person who's speaking to them, trying to, actually, frankly, be helpful. When we wish you weren't so bitter, we wish you weren't so resentful. Please stop. If the person speaking to them hasn't gone through anything of the sort of what they've gone through, what they're going to feel is alienated. They're going to feel like, well, this person doesn't get me. They don't understand me. Whereas if you say to them, look, I validate your reasons that you have for being bitter and being resentful. Man, I've never had to go through that. If I would have gone through that, I might feel just like you. I completely validate and understand that. That's actually that's like a healing balm for a person who feels like that, because finally someone is taking them seriously. Someone is hearing them. When people who are very deeply bitter and resentful aren't being heard, they start rioting. They may throw rocks and get violent and, do things they later resent that might even land them in jail if no one systemically ever hears them.
one of the
But,
challenges, go ahead.
well, yeah, one thing I do want to let you finish, but I want to say the yes and to that. It is probably more likely than not, if this happened to you a long time ago, you're not going to get that opportunity you got. No one is going to get that opportunity you got with your elementary school teacher on a regular basis. So you can talk to an empty chair, but here's what I've always told people, and I'm wondering what you think about this. Look, there are people in the world who are evil people. There are people in the world, like even people who were elementary school teachers. Not to go all Pink Floyd the Wall on you, but I mean, there are teachers who just think it's really fun to pick on little kids, and that's why they got into the teaching profession. And that's messed up. And I think nowadays there's more transparency, and hopefully those teachers don't get to hold a job. And they could be women, by the way, too, female teachers. And it's like when you hear people give victim statements before someone who did something to them is sentenced and thrown in jail. There's always a lot of resentment and a lot of bitterness, it seems, in those victimhood statements. And you did this to me, and I hope you rot in hell. And what I don't think those of us who are good, decent people who aren't psychopaths don't understand is those people think that's hilarious. They think it's freaking great that you're still being hurt and you're still going to be injured for the rest of your entire natural freaking life because of what I did to you. Good. Suffer. Because I don't like you, and I think it's hilarious that you're suffering. And somehow we think that the person's going to find some sort of compassion in them because we've had this chance to tell them what we think of them. But I would argue, one of the reasons perhaps that your elementary school teacher didn't offer you an apology and just ghosted you is to leave that loop open just to spite you.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, but again, now it's their problem. It always will be their problem. But we're not going to change those people. So now what? What do we do? Well, what I tell people is if you give this person who did unto you, caused you to be bitter, because let's face it, it may be systemic, it may be a whole bunch of women, it may be one woman, but all these women who rejected you or wouldn't go out with you, maybe you do need to do some self-work before you're attractive enough to deserve getting the kind of woman you want. You alluded to that very well and very accurately. But as long as we're giving someone who did unto us all of that headspace and all of that resentment, and we're letting it ruin our lives and keep us in a victimhood state instead of going out there and rising above it and succeeding anyway, we're granting superpowers to that person in a way that they're the least of people on earth who deserve to have that power over us, because they do. They still have power over us. If we're resenting them, if we're bitter because of them, then they've got us right where they want us, suffering. So that one statement, that one reframe of one's mindset has changed a lot of lives of people I've talked to. And indeed, I've had to eat my own dog food, as they used to say at Cisco Systems, I had to go put my own stuff to the test. And there are people who've done wrong to me, and the best thing I can do is forget about them and just not give them any headspace anymore. There's people who are dead and gone who abused me. I could let them continue to ruin my life, ruin my ability to have relationships, ruin my ability to think well of myself and to succeed because they told me I would fail or they assaulted me or whatever they did. But no, if I keep letting them have the ability to run rampant roughshod in my mind, I'm granting them a superpower they don't deserve over me. When I cut ties, I say, you know what, dude? Literally, forget you. Not as a euphemism for the other F-bomb, but I'm literally just going to stop ruminating on this. I'm going to stop focusing on this, and I'm going to move forward. That, to me, is the most liberating thing. And the best part is it doesn't need the person to be sitting in front of you at all. If you could forget someone without their direct intervention in the process, you could say, "Look, see ya," wouldn't want to be you. One of the reasons the MGTOW guys don't like me very much is because I'm living a great life with a woman who cares about me, and I've beaten the system that they say doesn't work. Well, I'm not a unicorn. My first wife was a crazy woman who wrecked my life. I have every right, and this is why I agree with you so much. Look, I have every right to say, Women are crazy. They're terrible. This woman seemed wonderful the day I married her and then just went Jekyll and Hyde on my ass and turned into someone I didn't even know and ruined me. And I'm never going to risk that again. I'm going to stay in my bubble. I'm going to stay single. I'm going to watch porn. I'm going to get fat. I'm going to become a bitter old bastard. I'm not going to take a shower just to make sure women don't touch me or my life. I'm building a freaking brick wall between me and the outside world. But you know what? My ex-wife would continue to win every single day by making me miserable if I let that happen. Win after win, just racking up wins on the daily basis because I'm putting up with that attitude. No, my best revenge was saying I'm not going to be a victim anymore. And in fact, after my divorce, I'm going to get better with women, watching myself get better. Because when people told me, hey, look, this wasn't your fault. She's crazy. What could you have done? You were a great husband, great father. You know what? Forget that. Forget her. I'm going to do better because I want to do better for me. And I can tell you, my ex-wife was not very happy when I met Emily, not very happy when I had 2 more kids and they're happy and healthy, not very happy at all that I'm doing what I do for a living, shouting it out from the rooftops. But I also haven't talked to her or really thought about her much. I know that sounds ironic because we're talking about right now. I don't even think about her much. I haven't talked to her in 7 years since my daughter turned 18. I moved on, which means, I'm not giving her headspace. I'm not giving her any space in my life for her to contribute to my lack of well-being or to mess with my sanity anymore. So, I mean, we as guys, the takeaway here, Frank, is we got to do something. We've got to do something if we're starting to feel this resentment, because it will eat us from the inside. It will harm us. Whatever we're resentful towards, chances are they not only, they may not care. They may not even know we're resentful unless, you get in touch with them 40 years later and tell them like you did. But they may think that's hilarious that we're resentful. The best revenge is to get past it and live your best life. That's the best revenge.
A couple of things I do want to bring up here. Are there evil people in the world? Absolutely. There's no question. Is everybody who harms us an evil person? No. And sometimes you might be dealing with somebody who is not evil, but they made mistakes. And it's important to make that distinction because part of the resentful frame of mind is just to categorize somebody as they hurt me, they made a mistake with me, they're evil, when in fact they just might be not very bright. They made mistakes. They're trying to figure out their way through the world and they obviously messed up and we were the consequence of that. So let's make those two distinctions. If you're dealing with a truly evil person, then nothing you do to connect with them or appease them or even communicate with it won't have a resolution other than giving you the chance. Yeah, other than giving you the chance to just get something off your chest. With that said, part of dealing with resentment is understanding that it doesn't matter if the person was genuinely evil or if they're just messed up people making mistakes. The harm that you felt is legitimate, but how you process that harm is a reflection on the kind of life you're going to build for yourself.
Well, I would argue that no matter how you deal with it, as long as you're giving that person headspace in your life and letting that play over and over and over again in your life, you're feeding the bitterness rather than moving on from it.
With that said, that life experience might be a good turning point and a motivation for an individual to say, I never want to be like that person. And I don't think of that as giving that person headspace. I think of that as saying, this is what happened to me. I never want to be the type of person that they were. And I'm going to go forward in my life not doing certain things. Now, some people may say, well, that's them still taking up headspace. I look at it as I had an opportunity to learn from that about what not to do to other people.
Well, I would agree 1,000% that's a completely different frame of mind, and that's the right frame of mind to have. Like, let me put that in absolutely perfect perspective with an absolutely direct example. and I can pick up on the one that I was just talking about. Yes, I had a crazy ex-wife who ruined my life. Now that I've had that experience, I'm a better dating coach because I can be of assistance to guys who are going through something like that right now.
You've also
I'm
learned how
glad
to
it
spot
happened
the
in that
yeah.
respect because
You've
I've
learned how
moved
to
on
spot the
from
red
it.
flags. You've
Yeah,
learned how
now
to spot
I'm
red
helping
flags.
someone else, just like you said at the beginning of this whole show. I can be there to help someone recover because I've healed from it in many ways. Am I going to pronounce myself 100% healed from it? I don't know. I don't really think I'm particularly wallowing in the damage from it anymore. I mean, I've had a wonderful woman and a wonderful marriage to keep me warm all these years. You know what I mean? So to speak. But yeah, I
How long
understand
has
where
it
you're
been
coming
now?
from.
How long
And I
has it
agree.
been now? How long have you two been together now?
19 years.
19 years. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And I think these guys are sick of me saying this on the show, but I have not had one day in those 19 years that was like most days with my ex-wife in terms of the misery. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's an important point to make. First of all, not everybody who did unto us is flat out straight up evil. But the effect of what they did on us is still there, causing that resentment. And either way, I can't ruminate on what was done to me, either the who that did it or the what that happened. I have to take it and learn from it. And, just like the best revenge is not letting them live rent free in my head and destroy me, if I take that and I kind of twist it around, like ironic humor almost, and I go into the world and say, hey, look, because I had this experience, I can help you. This is a positive now that I know about this, that I've felt this, that I've experienced it, that I can completely relate to you if you're coming to me with something similar. That is a gift. And when you treat it as a gift, voila, what's happened is your mindset has indeed flipped. It's not negative, resentful wallowing. It's, look, man, I have gone through some stuff in my life. How can I make the world a better place because of it?
I want to add something here. One of the motivations to deal with your resentment, and in the case of dating, dealing with your resentment against women, dealing with your resentment against people. Resentment, like any behavior pattern, is habit forming. And when you give in to a lot of resentment, you are training yourself to be in the habit of resenting people.
Yes.
You're training yourself to give in to all of those emotions of resentment. And like I said, resentment can feel good because it makes you feel safe, it makes you feel strong, it makes you feel powerful. It's a way of protecting yourself. And those are all good attributes. Unfortunately, when it comes to resentment, all it can do is create more resentment, and then you start applying that to situations where it doesn't actually apply.
Yes. In
So
other words,
we'll
you start
use
looking for reasons to resent people.
exactly. So let's
Yeah.
use just a common example here that comes up with my coaching. Somebody comes to me and I'm coaching them for dating and relationships, and they had a bad day at work because they made a mistake at work and their boss came in and had to correct them. And when they're describing this story, I'm looking at it and I says, well, what you did was not really acceptable on the job. So yeah, your boss is going to tell you, look, you can't do that. You have to do this. And they describe the situation, and I don't find it particularly ominous. I think that, the manager was just doing their job, but a person who's already very exercised in being resentful can then apply those same visceral emotions to a situation that it really does not need to apply to.
And you know what? Here's a good test. Am I avoiding having a confrontation or a potentially difficult conversation with someone because my assumption is they're going to resent me as the messenger because I gave it to them? If I'm projecting that result out onto other people, it may be more about me than them. That might be because I have problems with resentment. And so I'm worried people will resent me if I have a difficult conversation with them. So I shy away and I become Mr. Nice Guy. No wonder Mr. Nice Guy is often very resentful underneath, right?
It can happen. It
Yeah,
can
it
be
can.
that somebody who's very nice is nice not because they're being nice for the sake of being nice. They're being nice because they're holding back what they would really want to express.
Because they live in this vortex of resentment and potential resentment. It's ugly.
And look, it's understandable.
Yeah.
It's especially depending on how you were brought up. If you were brought up where any expression, positive or negative, was met with a less than friendly or less than pleasant attitude, it can be a very, very hard habit to break until finally you end up exploding. Being a people pleaser, sometimes they explode and then they freak out and oh
Yeah.
no, now, and then that just reinforces the belief. You see, I expressed myself and now people are angry at me. Hold on, let's process this. It's not that you expressed yourself. It's the way you exploded on the person. That's what's making them weary of you. Not the fact that you communicated, look, I'm really not happy with this situation. It's you came out and from their perspective, you came out of nowhere with all of this anger. And that's one of the reasons that some people don't like expressing themselves, because in their experience, every time they do, they're afraid of losing control when expressing themselves. So they keep it bottled up and they keep it tighter and they go on, and then they get resentful that they can't express themselves.
Well, Frank, I tell you what, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think you're right on in everything you say. I do want to bring to light that you are still going onward with your weight loss journey. And because of the massive amount of weight you've lost, which I mean, man, that is just incredibly inspirational to a lot of us out here. I mean, 240 pounds?
No, I started at 460 and I have lost half of that, 230 pounds.
30.
I now have a lot of hanging skin, and I'm getting that surgery done sometime in the next 2 months,
Yeah,
maybe
people have to
sooner.
understand when you lose that much weight, you've lost the fat, but literally your skin is an organ, and to accommodate that extra mass over the years, you've developed more skin, and that stays
I
even
have
though you've
about,
lost the fat.
yeah, I have about 30 pounds of hanging skin that needs to be cut off. I have a surgery coming up. I did set up a GoFundMe. So to ask anybody listening to this, if my work has inspired you in any way from the time that Scott interviewed me nearly 20 years ago, if my YouTube videos, my interviews, any of my books or whatnot, if anything has made a difference in your life, um, I'm set up a GoFundMe and Scott will have the link in the description of this podcast. If you'd like to contribute, it would be very appreciated. And I'm hoping that this is going to be my It's a Wonderful Life moment, where people that I have helped and inspired throughout my life will be able to come and help me now.
Yeah, even on this podcast, lots of these insights that you've given today, Frank, are going to be very meaningful to a lot of these guys. So, especially a lot of you guys of means out there, if you would give a little bit towards what Frank's going through here and help him to kind of, punctuate this journey by getting the surgery he needs. I want to go ahead and clarify. Frank is in Canada, and there are good things and bad things about national health care. This would count as an elective surgery in
Well,
Canada, would it?
no, part of the surgery is covered.
Okay.
Okay, part of the surgery is covered. What's not covered is the anesthesia that I have to pay for
My
myself
goodness.
and the plastic surgery for reconstruction.
So
Now,
that's the elective.
yeah, and it's basically they're slicing off 30 pounds of having hanging skin. If you visit the website, you'll actually see a picture where I have a towel under the hanging skin and I'm lifting it up, and that's the part they're going to slice off. Once that slices off, the way the surgeon explained it to me is that I may have an irregular looking body. And I've already told him, look, you don't even have to save my belly button. Okay. I really don't care. I just want to be able to move forward with my life. The surgeon has encouraged me to consider this. Now, if I do the surgery and it's not necessary, then they're going to do a minimal amount. They're only going to know after they open me up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't imagine someone going through such a surgery without anesthesia, first of all. I mean, I think you could just put a period on the end of that sentence. So these guys definitely should go contribute whatever they can to your GoFundMe. The URL that I've set up, guys, is mountaintopodcast.com/Frank Talks, FRANKTALKS, where you will be sent to a website that'll tell a little bit more about Frank's story, show the pictures he's talking about, and where you can contribute. Frank, man, it has been way too long, and I'm so glad we had this conversation today. Good back and forth on it. It's an important conversation, and not to be missed. We definitely talked frankly about it. So thanks again, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. This is one of the first interviews I've done getting back into this. And it's, as always, you were one of the first people who interviewed me so many years ago when I first became a dating coach. And now that I'm on the tail end of this health journey, you're one of the first people to interview me again. So thank you very much for your support.
Well, you're quite welcome, and back at you, man. It's always been good times. You know your stuff. You know women. You've been around the block. You're not a silver spoon guy. Like I'm not a silver spoon guy. Everything you've learned about women has been hard fought, so it's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I hope you'll come back and let us know how it went after the surgery's over. You've had some time to convalesce.
I look forward to my return here. I got a 1 in 13,000 chance of not waking up from this surgery. And
13,000. I'll take those odds.
yeah, those are good odds in my favor. I'm going in there as healthy as possible. I don't have diabetes anymore. My asthma's been removed with the lifestyle changes. Um, I'm not on the number of medications I used to be on. So everything is good, but there's always that chance. And if I'm alive on the other end of it, I'll definitely be back on the podcast.
Heck, man, I think we have a 1 in 13,000 chance of something else getting us before the surgery. I would take those odds. I mean, you're going to spend 30, 40,000 days on Earth. I mean, 1 in 13,000 every day. I take those odds. Excellent, excellent stuff, man. Just the fact that you can reverse diabetes is also probably the subject of an entire separate show. That's powerful. But yeah, man, great stuff. And once again, I appreciate you.
All the best. Take care, my friend.
Yeah. And guys, go to mountaintoppodcast.com. Check out our three main sponsors, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, thekeyport.com, and Hero Soap. Man, I've been using the honey bourbon Hero Soap, and it just makes you smell like a man. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like this translucent caramel colored soap, and it just feels old school. You guys ought to try it. Get some of that from Hero Soap. Whether you deal with Hero Soap, the Keyport, or, of course, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get an extra 10% off your order. Also, guys, look, get on the phone, talk to me. I don't play a fictional character. I'm exactly who you think I'm going to be. Get on my calendar, schedule some time, 25 minutes for us to talk. Give your feedback on the show if I can help put a plan together that supercharges your effect on women and the effect women have in your life and get you the right girlfriend or wife. Hey, let's do that too. All of that is there for you and more at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.